Today I want to talk about batting, and basically the things I'm going to talk about are the things that I wish someone had told me about when I was starting to quilt. Back in the day it was hard to figure out these things unless you could find a good book to use as a reference. Now you've got YouTube, and maybe you hook up with the Quilt Guild or online with other quilters and you can get advice that way. But today it's beginning batting concepts that I want you to think about. First, I want to talk about things that aren't really batting, but that you can use instead of batting for the back of a quilt. If you're not, depending on what you're using it for, this can be a good alternative. This is just fleece. It's relatively inexpensive. It's very durable, and it's warm. And instead of putting batting, you can put a quilt top to this, and then this becomes a batting and a backing at the same time. Same thing with Minky. This is Cuddle Fabric, is another brand name. It's polyester also, like the this one is, the fleece. And it makes a nice back. You're getting a lot of weight if you're using a batting along with a backing like this. So I would use one of these, or perhaps just regular old fleece. It doesn't have to be fancy, depending on where you're using your quilt and what you're going to use it for. So again, all these are polyester, and I would use these instead of batting. I would just use a piece quilt top, and then this as batting and backing at the same time. There are lots of kinds of choices and a lot of brands, and they're all pretty good today. Hobbs is one that's very popular and well known. This is cotton, and the difference here I wanted to show you. I don't know that you can see the color difference, but this is cotton natural, and this is cotton that's bleached. So the difference would be, if you're making a piece top that's got a lot of white in it, it would be important to use a bleached white batting behind it, because the batting can make the colors look different if it's a different color. And for dark quilts, you can also buy black batting as another option. Another kind of batting that I would never use in a quilt, but I wanted to talk about if you want to make some pot holders, is this Insole Bright. And I don't know if you can see, but it looks like it's got a piece of aluminum foil between this. It's got a little glitter to it. It makes a great pot holder, though, doubled up. This is not something you want to make for those baked potato covers you can put in the microwave. Do not use this because it's got metal in it, but for pot holders it's great. Another batting choice is wool, and it's a little thicker than these cottons would be. You can see from the side the thickness, and depending on what you're going to use your quilt for, you might want a little poofiness in it and a little more warmth, and wool is an option. And they sell wool as a washable batting today. So it's a good option, and it provides a lot of warmth. And one thing about this one, this company, Quilter's Dream, makes a lot of battings that are really good, and I like their labeling because they put on the front of everything how far apart you can quilt it. And as a beginning quilter or experienced one, this is something you've always got to check, because when you're quilting your quilt together, the top, the batting, and the backing, it's really important to keep this in mind, because if you don't follow these guidelines and you don't quilt it close enough together, then your batting can shift when you wash it. So this is one that I like, this wool. Another one that I like is Warm and Natural brand. It's a good one. And I always keep all the pieces of batting when you make a quilt. You can use something like Heat and Bond to put the pieces together if you don't want to stitch them together. So if you've got a wall hanging or something smaller, placemats, table runners, you should use all your old pieces up. There's no reason not to, and this is a way that you can put them together and heat them together. Another one of my favorites is Quilter's Dream, the environmental, because this is made out of recycled plastic bottles. It's very soft. It's 100% polyester batting, and it's a good choice in terms of getting those old plastic bottles out of the environment and doing something useful with it. It's really nice to quilt with, and it's a good product. Another one to consider is Dream Angel. This is 100% rayon, and it's not flammable. And that is something that's important when you're thinking about baby quilts. Polyester melts, cotton burns really quickly, but this batting will not burn. And so that's something to consider when you're making baby quilts and making them safe. Another thing that you want to think about is the quilting distance in terms of durability of the quilt. If it says you quilt it 4 inches apart, but you've done 6 or 8, when you wash your quilt, it's going to start falling apart over time. And depending on what you want your quilt to do in its life, if it's going to be used and washed, then it needs to be durable. And so how far apart you quilt will determine whether the batting shifts and gets lumpy inside. So pay close attention to that. Another thing you need to think about is if it's a wall hanging or a show quilt, it's probably going to be ornately quilted and closely quilted, which makes it beautiful. The stitches are beautiful. However, if it's a quilt you want to put over your lap or on your bed or over your feet at night, it's heavy. The more it's quilted closely, the heavier and the less pliable, the less it has that drape that you want for many kinds of quilts. So you need to think about the end use when you're determining how close together to quilt, or if you send it off to a long arm quilter, talk to them about the limits of your batting in terms of distance to quilt, as well as keeping in mind what you're going to use this thing for at the end. Because if you put all your time into it, you want to have it serve the purpose that you intended it should. So I think that's it for batting today. Have a good day.